The arena was packed with every villain on the ship. They filled the seats from the sand floor to the highest rows, thousands of pale faces hungry for blood. This was not just entertainment. This was punishment. This was the death of Hope. Commander Goran sat in his high box, dressed in ceremonial robes. He wanted to look his best for this moment. He wanted to watch the troublesome human die in style. The guards dragged Yuna through the corridors in heavy chains. Her hands were bound. Her feet were connected by short links that made her shuffle. They wanted her to enter the arena looking weak and defeated. They wanted the slaves watching to see their hero brought low before she even began a fight. But Yuna did not look defeated. She walked with her head high, her eyes calm. She studied every guard, every door, every possible weapon. Her mind was clear and cold, like deep water in winter. As she passed a ventilation shaft, she heard a tiny whisper. Dory's voice, barely loud enough to reach her ears. "We are ready. When you give the signal." Yuna did not respond. She did not even blink. But she heard. They brought her into the arena through a low gate. The crowd roared when they saw her, a sound of hatred and excitement mixed together. She was small, covered in chains, bruised from the guards' rough handling. She looked like nothing. She looked like an easy kill. The gate on the other side of the arena opened, and Maksu entered. He was massive, even by Velen standards. Nearly 8 feet tall, with muscles like stone and arms as thick as Yuna's waist. His gray skin was covered with scars from 200 victories. He wore the traditional armor of a champion, decorated with the bones and teeth of creatures he had killed. In his hand, he carried a curved blade that gleamed in the arena lights. The crowd went wild. They chanted his name. They stamped their feet. They knew what was coming. They had seen it so many times before. Maksu walked to the center of the arena and waited. He looked at Yuna with something like pity. To him, she was just another victim. A brief amusement before breakfast. The guards removed Yuna's chains. She stood alone, unarmed, wearing nothing but the torn clothes she had been captured in. The wound on her arm had reopened, and fresh blood ran down to her fingers. Maksu raised his blade in salute to Commander Goran. Goran nodded. The fight was official. The champion turned back to Yuna and waited for her to run, to scream, to beg. That was what victims did. That was what made the killing fun. Yuna did not run. She stretched her shoulders, rolled her neck, and settled into a stance. It was nothing fancy, nothing beautiful. It was the stance of someone who had fought in ugly places where winning was the only thing that mattered. Maksu frowned. This was wrong. Victims did not act like this. He charged, bringing his blade down in a killing arc. Yuna moved. She was faster than she looked. The blade cut through air where she had been standing, missing her by inches. She did not try to block or grab the weapon. She did not have the strength for that. Instead, she moved around it, flowing like water around stone. Maksu swung again. And again. Each time, Yuna was not there. She was beside him, behind him, always just out of reach. She was not attacking. She was learning, watching how he moved, how he balanced, where he left himself open. The champion grew frustrated. His swings became wilder, faster, more desperate. He had never missed this many times. He had never fought something that simply refused to be hit. Yuna let him swing 5 more times. She let him tire himself, let his frustration turn into fear. Then she stopped running. Maksu brought his blade down in a massive overhead strike. Yuna stepped into it instead of away. She came up inside his reach, where the blade could not touch her, and drove her fist into his throat. The champion staggered back, choking. His blade dropped from his fingers as his hands went to his throat. He could not breathe. He could not understand what was happening. Yuna picked up his fallen blade. Thought it was too heavy for her to swing properly. But she did not need to swing it. She knew exactly where to put it. She had been trained by the best. She had spent 12 years learning how bodies broke. Maksu was on his knees, still struggling to breathe when Yuna ended him. One clean cut. No cruelty. No celebration. Just death. The arena fell silent. Every Velen, from the lowest seats to Commander Goran's high box, sat frozen in shock. This was impossible. Maksu was undefeated. Maksu was invincible. Maksu was dead. Yuna looked up at Goran. Blood dripped from the champion's blade in her hands. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no triumph, just cold certainty. Then she raised the blade high. The signal. Deep in the ship, Duri finished his work on the door controls. The locks on every slave cell opened at once. Emergency lights began to flash. Alarms began to scream. The captives, who had been watching the fight on screens throughout the ship, understood immediately. They poured out of their cells, carrying the weapons they had hidden. Filled with rage, they had been saving for this moment. Hana led a group toward the medical bay. They needed supplies. They needed to free the captives who were too sick or wounded to fight. Taiho led another group toward the armory. Real weapons would make this easier. The guards they met along the way were not prepared for slaves who fought back. They were not prepared for anything. In the arena, the guards rushed toward Yuna. They expected her to run or surrender. She did neither. She attacked. The first guard fell before he could raise his weapon. The second died reaching for his radio. Yuna moved through them like a storm, taking their weapons as they fell, using everything she had learned in 30 years of fighting for her life. The Velens in the crowd began to panic. They pushed toward the exits, trampling each other in their fear. Some tried to join the fight, but they were civilians, not soldiers. They had never faced anything like this. They had never imagined that slaves could fight. Commander Goran watched his world collapse from his high box. He screamed orders into his radio, but no one answered. He could see smoke rising from different parts of the ship. He could hear explosions in the distance. He turned to run and found Yuna standing in the doorway. She was covered in blood, mostly not her own. The champion's blade hung loose in her hand. She was breathing hard, but her eyes were steady, clear. How? Goran whispered. How is this possible? You are just a slave. You are nothing. Yuna walked toward him. He backed away until he hit the wall of his own box. My world, Yuna said, her voice quiet and cold, has been trying to kill us for 200,000 years. Ice ages, plagues, earthquakes, predators, each other. Every day is a fight to survive. And we are still here. She stopped in front of him. He was shaking now, this mighty commander who had taken slaves from 100 worlds. You picked the wrong species to hunt, Yuna said. We are the thing that hunts back. The blade fell. The revolution took 4 more hours. Some Velens surrendered. Some fought and died. Some escaped in shuttles and fled into the dark between stars. By morning, the ship belonged to the captives. Yuna stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. Duri was working at the controls, figuring out how to fly this alien vessel. Hana was treating the wounded. Taiho was organizing the freed slaves into something like order. Pollux approached slowly and stood beside Yuna. What now? He asked. Yuna did not answer immediately. She was thinking about the long road ahead. Finding human space. Getting everyone home. Dealing with the trauma that would haunt these people for the rest of their lives. But those were problems for tomorrow. Now, she said, we go home. Pollux nodded. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. Thank you. For everything. For showing us that we were not nothing. Yuna looked at him, and for the first time since her capture, she smiled. It was a real smile. tired but warm. "You were never nothing," she said. "You just forgot how to fight. Everyone forgets sometimes." She turned back to the stars. "The difference is getting back up." The ship turned toward human space. Behind them, they left the wreckage of a slaver empire that would never be the same. And somewhere in the galaxy, other slavers would hear the story. They would hear about the human female who killed 2 beasts, who killed a champion, who started a revolution with nothing but her hands and her will. They would learn to be afraid. They would learn what happens when you hunt the hunters. The story spread through the slave holds like fire through dry grass. The small female killed 2 hunting beasts with rocks. The small female made the beasts afraid. The small female looked at Commander Gorn and did not look away. With each telling, the story grew. Some said she killed 3 beasts. Some said 5. Some said she caught one of them with her bare hands and broke its neck. The truth did not matter. What mattered was the feeling the story created. For the first time in a very long time, the slaves felt something besides despair. Una was returned to holding Cell 9 after the sorting. The guards were rougher with her now, pushing and hitting more than necessary. She let them. Bruises healed. Information was valuable. She learned which guards were angry and which were scared. The scared ones were more dangerous in some ways, but easier to predict. When she entered the cell, the other captives looked at her differently. Before, she had been just another prisoner. Now she was something else. They moved aside to give her space. They watched her with wide eyes full of questions. Pollux rushed to her side. "You are hurt. Your arm, the blood. It looks worse than it is," Una said. She sat down against the wall and began tearing strips from her shirt to bandage the wounds. "I have had worse. How did you do that?" Pollux asked. His voice was shaking, but not from fear anymore. It was shaking from excitement. "The beasts, they are killers. They have killed hundreds. No one has ever. They were animals," Una said simply. "Animals can be understood. Animals can be beaten." She looked around the cell at the other captives. They were all watching her now, listening to every word. She saw the change in their eyes. The dead look was fading, replaced by something alive. This was the moment. This was when she could start building something. "Come here," she said quietly. "All of you. I want to talk." They came. Slowly at first, then faster, gathering around her like lost children around a fire. There were 12 of them, from 7 different species. Most of them had been on this ship for weeks or months. All of them had given up hope. Why Una studied each face, each body, each set of eyes. She was looking for something specific. Not strength, not courage. Those could be built. She was looking for a spark, a tiny flame of will that had not been completely crushed. She found it in 3 of them. The first was Dory, a young human male with nervous hands and quick eyes. He had been taken from a mining colony where he worked as a technician. He was scared, but he was smart. When he talked about machines and systems, his fear faded and his voice grew confident. The second was Hannah, a human female in her 40s with gray in her hair and steel in her spine. She had been a medical worker on a refugee transport before the Velans took her. She was quiet and careful, the kind of person who watched more than she spoke. The third was Taiho, an older human man with scarred hands and a broken nose. He had served in Earth's Navy 40 years ago, before retirement took him to a colony world and the Velans took him from there. The years of captivity had bent him, but they had not broken him. Una could see the soldiers still living behind his tired eyes. Over the following days, Una worked carefully. She did not make speeches about freedom or revenge. She did not promise victory. She simply started talking to people one at a time, learning what they knew and what they could do. She asked Dory about the ship's systems. Where were the controls? How did the doors work? What would happen if certain things stopped working? Dory did not know everything, but he knew enough. He had been fixing things on the Mayan colony for years. Machines were machines, no matter who built them. She asked Hana about medicine and the body. How long could someone survive without food? Without water? What happened when you hurt certain places? Hana answered quietly, understanding that these were not innocent questions. She asked Taiho about fighting and tactics. How did you organize people who were not soldiers? How did you move without being seen? How did you turn nothing into something? Taiho's old memories woke up as he talked, and his eyes grew sharper with each conversation at night. When the lights were dim and the guards were fewer, Yuna gathered small groups together and taught them simple things. How to breathe without making sound. How to communicate with looks and small gestures. How to turn a piece of metal or a chunk of rock into something dangerous. She was not building an army. She was building a possibility. The other captives in the cell joined slowly. Pollux was the first of the non-humans. He was small and weak, but he could fit into spaces that others could not. He could carry messages and watch without being noticed. Yuna gave him a job, and he held on to it like a lifeline. Word began spreading to other cells. The guards did not pay attention to what slaves whispered to each other. They did not notice the looks that passed between captives when they were moved through the corridors. They did not see the small objects that disappeared from work details and reappeared, hidden in cells. But Commander Gorn noticed something. The slaves were different, quieter, more watchful. They did not cry as much. They did not beg anymore. When the guards walked past, the slaves looked at them instead of looking away. Garn did not like it. He called his officers together. "The human female," he said. "She is becoming a problem. We could space her," one officer suggested. "Throw her out the airlock. End it." Goran shook his head. "That might make things worse. The slaves already tell stories about her. If she dies quietly, she becomes a legend. We need to break her publicly. Destroy her in front of everyone." He smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Schedule her for the Champions Arena. Let Maksu kill her. Let them all see that she is nothing special." The officers nodded. Maksu was the Velen champion, undefeated in 200 fights. He had killed slaves, gladiators, and beasts without ever losing. He would tear the human apart. In holding Cell 9, Yuna continued her work. She did not know about Gorn's plan yet, but she knew that time was running out. She could feel it in the air, in the way the guards looked at her, in the tension building throughout the ship. Whatever was coming, it was coming soon. She looked at her small army of broken creatures, slowly learning to become dangerous again. She looked at Duri and Hana and Tayo, already planning the next steps. They were not ready. Not yet. But sometimes you had to fight before you were ready. Sometimes that was the only choice. 3 days passed on the Velen ship. 3 days of cold food, dark cells, and the distant hum of engines. Yuna spent every moment watching, learning, preparing. She memorized the guard rotations. She studied the layout of the ship through the small window in their cell door. She learned which guards were lazy and which were cruel. On the 4th day, the soldiers came. They opened the cell door and shouted orders in a language Yuna did not understand. But she understood the weapons they pointed. She understood the message. Get up. Move. Now. The captives were herded through narrow corridors and down steep stairs. Pollux walked beside Yuna, his small body shaking with fear. He had seen this before. He knew where they were going. "The sorting," he whispered. "They will make us fight. To see who will break." Yuna said nothing. She was counting steps, noting doors, remembering the path. The corridors opened into a wide space, and Yuna felt her breath catch for just a moment. It was an arena. A real arena, like something from ancient history. The floor was covered with sand stained dark with old blood. The walls rose high, lined with seats filled with villains. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all watching with hungry eyes. Commander Goran sat in a special box above the arena floor. He looked down at the new captives like a farmer inspecting cattle. "Welcome to the sorting," his voice boomed through speakers. "Here you will learn your place. The strong will serve. The weak will die. This is the way of the Velans. This is the truth of the universe." The captives were divided into groups. Yuna was pushed into a group of 6, including a large reptilian creature who could not stop shaking and a small bird-like being who was already crying. None of them looked like fighters. None of them looked like they would survive. A gate opened on the far side of the arena. Something moved in the darkness behind it. Something big. 2 creatures burst into the light. They were beasts built for killing. Each one was the size of a horse, covered with black scales and sharp spines. Their mouths were full of teeth like broken glass. Their claws left deep marks in the sand as they moved. Their eyes were yellow and empty and filled with hunger. The crowd cheered. Yuna watched the beasts carefully. She saw how they moved, how they held their weight, how they watched the group of captives. They were predators, but they were trained predators. They had done this before. They knew that captives ran and screamed and died easily. The other captives in her group were already falling apart. 2 of them froze in place, their minds shutting down from terror. One turned and tried to run back toward the gate they had come through. The guards pushed him back with electric prods. 2 more huddled together, crying and praying to gods that could not hear them. Yuna did not move. She stood still and watched the beast approach. The larger one came first. It was the dominant one. She could tell. It moved with confidence, sure of its power, sure of its kill. It focused on the frozen captives, the easy prey. Yuna bent down slowly and picked up a piece of broken stone from the arena floor. It was jagged and sharp, about the size of her hand. Not much of a weapon, but she had fought with less. The beast lunged at one of the frozen captives. Yuna moved. She did not run away. She ran toward the beast. This surprised it. Prey was not supposed to run toward predators. Prey was supposed to run away, to trigger the chase instinct, to make killing easy. Yuna did not play by those rules. She came at the beast from the side, low and fast. When it turned its head toward her, she was already inside its reach. Its claws swept through empty air. Its jaws snapped shut on nothing. Yuna drove the sharp stone into its eye. The beast screamed. It was a terrible sound, high and loud and full of pain. It thrashed wildly, throwing Yuna aside. She hit the sand hard, rolled, and came up on her feet. Blood ran down her arm where a claw had caught her. She ignored it. The beast was blind in one eye now, confused and hurt. It stumbled in circles, trying to find its attacker. Yuna did not give it time to recover. She grabbed another stone from the ground and attacked again. This time she went for the throat. The beast fell. It kicked twice and was still. The arena went silent. Every Velen watching had stopped breathing. This was not how the sorting was supposed to go. Captives were supposed to die. They were supposed to scream and beg and be torn apart for entertainment. They were not supposed to fight. They were not supposed to win. The second beast stood frozen at the edge of the arena. It looked at Yuna, then at its dead companion, then back at Yuna. Something strange crossed its animal face. Something that looked almost like fear. Yuna started walking toward it. The beast took a step back. Then another. The predator was becoming prey, and it did not know how to handle this feeling. Yuna did not run. She did not charge. She just walked, steady and calm, blood dripping from her wounds, stone ready in her hand. Her eyes never left the beast. Her expression never changed. The beast broke. It turned and ran toward its gate, trying to escape back into its cage. Yuna caught it before it reached the door. She hamstrung it with one quick cut, bringing it down. Then she finished it, quick and clean, without cruelty, but without mercy. She stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by the bodies of two killing machines, covered in blood that was not all her own. Her breath came hard, but her hands were steady. She looked up at Commander Goran's box. Their eyes met across the distance. She did not smile. She did not speak. She just looked at him, and in that look was a message that needed no words. You made a mistake. Goran felt something cold crawl up his spine. It was a feeling he had not experienced in many, many years. It was fear. Yuna did not sleep that night. She sat with her back against the cold metal wall and let her mind drift backward, through time, through memory, to the world she came from. She was born in a small fishing town on the southern coast of Korea. The town was poor even before the climate wars. Afterward, it was nearly dead. The oceans had changed. The fish were dying. The storms came more often and hit harder. Every year, fewer boats came back. Her father was a fisherman named Junho. He had strong hands and a gentle voice, and he taught Yuna to read the water and the sky. He went out one morning when she was 8 years old, and he never came home. The storm took him, along with 3 other boats and 11 other men. Her mother, Minji, worked in a factory during the day, cleaned offices at night, and sold vegetables on weekends. She was always tired, always worried, always counting money that was never enough. Sometimes there was food. Sometimes there was not. Yuna learned early that the world did not care about her. The world would not feed her because she was hungry. It would not protect her because she was small. If she wanted to eat, she had to take. If she wanted to survive, she had to fight. She fought for the first time when she was 10. An older boy tried to steal her lunch at school. She broke his nose with her forehead. The principal called her mother. Her mother looked at the blood on Yuna's shirt and said nothing. That night, she taught Yuna how to throw a proper punch. By 16, Yuna was done with school and done with the fishing town. There was nothing for her there except slow death. She enlisted in the Republic Marine Corps on her birthday. The recruiter looked at her small body and laughed. 6 months later, she graduated at the top of her class. The military was hard, but Yuna understood hard. She understood that pain was just the body talking, and you did not have to listen. She understood that fear was just a feeling, and feelings could be ignored. She learned to shoot, to fight, to survive in any environment. She learned to keep going when everything inside her screamed to stop. She served 12 years. 3 combat tours in the Pacific conflicts, where the water wars turned islands into graveyards. 2 years as a combat instructor, teaching young soldiers how to stay alive. She saw friends die. She killed enemies. She did things that still visited her in dreams. She retired at 28, not because she was tired, but because the military was changing and she did not fit anymore. The new wars were fought with drones and computers. They did not need people like her, so she became a contractor. Private security for frontier colonies, the ugly places where corporations sent workers to die. The pay was good. The work was simple. Keep people alive in places that wanted to kill them. Her last job was on a colony world called Marin 7. It was supposed to be a 6-month contract. Guard the mining operation. Handle any local problems. Easy work. It was not easy. The local fauna was more dangerous than the survey showed. Much more dangerous. They were fast, smart, and they hunted in packs. On the 3rd month, they attacked the main camp. Yuna's team of 8 fought back. By morning, she was the only one left. The mining company did not send help. The evacuation shuttle did not come. Yuna was alone on a hostile world with nothing but a knife, a broken radio, and whatever she could salvage from the camp. She survived for 6 weeks. She hunted the creatures that had killed her team. She learned their patterns, their weaknesses, their fears. She became the predator, and they became the prey. By the time the rescue ship finally arrived, she had killed 17 of them. The rescue team found her sitting on a pile of their bodies, sharpening her knife. The doctors on the rescue ship said she should be dead. Her body was covered with scars, old and new. She had broken bones that had healed wrong. She had parasites in her blood and infections in her wounds. But her eyes were clear and her hands were steady. And when they asked her how she felt, she said she was hungry. That was 3 weeks ago. She had been traveling home on a small transport ship when the engine failed. She had been drifting for 2 days when the Velans found her. Now she sat in a slave cell on an alien ship, surrounded by creatures who had already given up. Yuna opened her eyes and looked around the cell. The other captives were sleeping or pretending to sleep. Pollux was curled up in a corner, his fur twitching with bad dreams. The ship hummed around them, carrying them toward whatever fate the Velans had planned. The Velans thought they had captured a victim. They thought she was weak because she was small, alone because she was helpless. They did not understand Earth was not a gentle world. Earth did not create gentle creatures. Earth was a world of earthquakes and hurricanes, of ice ages and plagues, of predators and wars. For 200,000 years, humanity had fought against its own planet just to survive. They had climbed out of the mud and reached for the stars while everything around them tried to drag them. Back down, the weak ones died. The soft ones died. The ones who gave up died. The ones who survived were the ones like Yuna. The ones who learned to eat pain for breakfast and sleep with death beside them. The ones who knew that life was a fight and fighting was the only way to live. The Velans had conquered many species. They had taken slaves from 100 worlds. But they had never met a human before. They did not know what they had brought onto their ship. Yuna smiled in the darkness. It was a cold smile, a patient smile, the smile of a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. They would learn. They would all learn. The Velan harvester ship moved through the dark space like a silent predator. It was old, ugly, and covered with the marks of 1,000 raids. Inside its metal belly, hundreds of slaves from dozens of worlds waited in cages, their hope already dead. Commander Goran stood on the bridge and watched the scanner screens with bored eyes. He had done this work for 40 years. He knew exactly what to look for. Small ships, weak species, easy prey. The Velans had built their entire empire on the backs of slaves, and Goran was very good at finding them. "Sir," said his officer, a young Velan named Bora, "we have something. Small transport vessel. One life sign. Drifting near the asteroid field." Goran walked closer to the screen. The ship was tiny, barely bigger than a shuttle. Its engines were damaged. It was limping through space like a wounded animal. Species? Goran asked. Bora checked the readings. Unknown. Bipedal mammal. Female. Appears to be alone. Goran smiled. Alone was good. Alone meant no witnesses, no rescue, no trouble. He gave the order, and the harvester ship changed course. The small transport tried to run when it saw them coming, but it was too slow and too broken. The Velans locked it with a tractor beam and pulled it into the loading bay like a fish on a hook. Goran sent a boarding team of 6 soldiers. They were back in less than 10 minutes. They dragged the creature between them. She was small, smaller than Goran expected. Her skin was a warm brown color, her hair black and cut short. She wore simple clothes, torn and dirty from whatever accident had damaged her ship. Her eyes were closed. The stun weapon had knocked her out completely. "Just one?" Goran asked. "Just one," confirmed the team leader. Ship log shows she was traveling alone. Some kind of personal journey. Her homeworld is listed as Earth. Goran had never heard of it. He waved his hand. Put her with the others. Log her as Specimen 7 to 14. Minimal threat. The soldiers dragged her away. They threw her into holding cell 9, a large metal room already filled with 12 other captives. The captives came from different worlds, different species. Some had fur. Some had scales. Some had too many eyes or not enough limbs. But they all shared the same look. The look of creatures who had given up. The human female landed hard on the floor. She did not move for a long time. The other captives watched her with empty eyes. One of them, a small furred creature named Pollux, moved closer. Pollux had been on this ship for 3 months. He had seen many new captives arrive. Most of them woke up screaming. Some never stopped. This one was different. She woke up slowly, like someone rising from a deep sleep. Her eyes opened, and for a moment she just lay there, staring at the ceiling. Then she sat up. She did not scream. She did not cry. She did not ask where she was or what was happening. She just looked around. Her eyes moved across the room, studying everything. The walls, the door, the small window where guards sometimes watched, the other prisoners. She looked at each thing carefully, like she was taking notes inside her head. Pollux had never seen a captive act like this. "You are awake," Pollux said quietly. "Are you all right?" The female turned her eyes to Pollux. They were dark eyes, calm and steady. "Where am I?" "Velen Harvester ship," Pollux said. "They take slaves." "From everywhere?" "They took me from my homeworld 3 months ago." "They took you from your ship." The female nodded slowly, like this was not surprising news. "How many guards?" Pollux blinked. Most new captives asked when they would be freed, or if anyone was coming to save them. They did not ask about guards. "Many," Pollux said. "Too many. There is no escape. The Velens have done this for centuries. No one escapes." The female looked at the door again. Then she looked back at Pollux. A small smile touched her lips. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that no one else knew. "What is your name?" she asked. "Pollux, I am Yuna." She said nothing more. She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. But she was not sleeping. Pollux could tell. She was listening, counting. Waiting over the next few hours, Pollux watched Yuna carefully. She did not move much, but her eyes were always open, always watching. When the guards walked past the cell, she noted how many there were and what weapons they carried. When food was pushed through the slot in the door, she studied how the slot opened and closed. The other captives ignored her. They were too lost in their own despair. But Pollux could not look away. There was something about this small female that made his fur stand up. Later that night, when the lights went dim and most of the captives were trying to sleep, Yuna moved to the small window in the door. She looked out into the corridor for a long time. Then she came back and sat next to Pollux. "Tell me about the Valance," she said. Pollux told her everything he knew. He told her about Commander Goran, who had been taking slaves for decades. He told her about the sorting, a terrible trial that all new slaves had to face. He told her about the work camps where captives were sent, and how most of them died within a year. Yuna listened without speaking. When Pollux finished, she asked more questions. How strong were the Velens? How fast? What were their weaknesses? What made them afraid? Pollux did not know the answers to most of these questions. He had never thought about what made the Velens afraid. He had only ever been afraid of them. "Why do you ask these things?" Pollux whispered. "It does not matter. We cannot fight them. We are nothing. Una turned her dark eyes to Pollux. In the dim light, they seemed to glow with something hard and sharp. "I am not nothing," she said softly. "And neither are you." She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes again. Pollux stayed awake for a long time, watching her. He did not understand this creature. He did not understand how someone could be so calm in a place like this. He did not understand why she was asking questions about fighting instead of crying about dying. But somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he had thought was dead, something small began to stir. It felt almost like hope.